Hey guys, Todd here. Today we're going to install the Morimoto XB LED daytime running lights on this 2018 Ford F-150. The tools I'll be using for this install are a ratchet, 10mm, 8mm, and 7mm sockets, a T25 Torx bit, an electric impact, and a fastener removal tool. Now make sure you're subscribed to our channel to stay up to date with all our latest content. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so in order to pull out this headlight, one of the first things we need to do is remove this plastic trim. Now, back here, we've got two bolts that actually hold that plastic trim in place. Because I've got an aftermarket fender flare, those two bolts are also supporting that fender flare. So I'm gonna pull that off anyway, but no matter what you have, you need to pull out those two bolts using a 7mm. I'm going to show you how to pop this loose on this side. We're going to do the same thing on the opposite side too. Let's get back here, kind of pry it out, and pop it straight off like this. Now watch out for these two clips right here. Sometimes they fall out. If they fall out, you want to pop them back in. All right, now we're going to go ahead and start popping this loose just by pulling it straight out. Now, mine's gonna come out pretty easy because I've had this off before, but yours, you might have to work it a little bit, but it just comes straight out like so. Just set that back to the side. We're gonna need to use it later. Okay, so we have to take out the grille in order to take out the headlight. Right down here, now we've got an exposed bolt. We're gonna take that out with an 8mm. This is what's holding the grille in at the bottom. Right next to it, we've also got another bolt. That's holding the headlight in. Since we're here, we're going to go ahead and pull that out too. Both of them come out with an 8mm and do the same thing on the opposite side. All right, now we need to pop off our top radiator cover in order to access the bolts on top of the grille. So we need to pull out these push pins. Just going to pop those out. We've got about 14 of them to pull out. Now with all those out, we're just going to lift up and slide it out from underneath and set that to the side. Okay, now that we've got this out of the way, we've got a couple of plugs we need to undo. This is for our active shutter system in the front. And we've also got a push pin holding this in. We're going to pop that off with our plastic removal tool. Get that out of the way. Now we've got 4 bolts holding the grille in at the top. We're going to take those out with a 10mm. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and pull our grille straight out and set it off to the side. All right, so now we've got 2 bolts up top that need to come off for this headlight to come off, as well as this push pin. We're going to pull out the 2 bolts with a 10mm and pop out the push pin with a fastener removal tool. All right, now we've got 1 last bolt holding this in. It's going to come out with a 10mm. Then we can wiggle the headlight straight out. Now this is a halogen. LED is going to be a little bit different, and just refer to your instructions if you have the LED housing. But we're just going to squeeze here and that pops right off. And then we can swing this around. We've got 2 plugs that need to come off. We're just going to squeeze and then pull it straight off. Squeeze and pull straight off. Okay, now here is our factory headlight. On the bottom of it, you're going to see this bracket that's actually bolted to it. What we're going to do is take a T25 Torx and remove those 3 bolts that hold this bracket on so we can port it over to our new Morimoto light. Once we've got all 3 of the screws unscrewed, we're going to lift up and then pull straight out. All right, now we're going to go ahead and mount this bracket onto our Morimoto headlamp the same way that it came off of our factory headlamp. Now, it's definitely advisable to get all 3 screws started before you tighten any one of them down. All right, now before we mount our new headlamps, what we need to do is decide whether we want our turn signal or hazard lights to be sequential or if we want them to be solid. So it's going to be an amber light right here that either lights up in a sequential pattern or it lights up as solid. If you want it as sequential, you're going to go to this connector right here and just leave it the way it is, install it the way it is. If you want it to come out solid, what you'll do is pull that connector apart and leave it like that. We're going to have it sequential, so we're going to have the connector together. Let's go ahead and install it. Okay, so what I have here is our DRL harness. This is our daytime running lights. This part goes to our fuse panel. This part goes to our passenger side headlamp. For the driver's side headlamp, I've already got that running off to the driver's side. So what I'm going to do is just let this hang right here for right now, and then take the fuse panel portion and run it up and pull it out next to the fuse panel. Okay, now I've got an S-Pod power distribution center on top of our cap, so it's not going to be very easy to see what's happening. So I'm just going to point out and show you guys what I'm doing. Down here, we've got our fuses that we're going to tap into. Right here, this is our number 36 fuse. If you look at your schematic, that's number 36. It's a 10 amp fuse. We're typically supposed to pull that out and tap into that location. But because this is an EcoBoost truck, that will stay powered up for about 30 minutes after you turn off the engine. So what we're going to do is go to this spot right here, number 37. That is a 25 amp fuse. We're going to pull that out, and I'll show you how to put that in with a fuse tap. All right, so here is the 25 amp fuse I just pulled out, and this is the fuse tap end of our harness. It's going to plug in right where I pulled out this 25 amp fuse. Before we do that though, what we're going to do is pull out the 10 amp fuse from the bottom on that 25 amp circuit. What we're going to do is put the 25 amp fuse into the fuse tap, just like so. So this right here is going to be fused onto this spot. The power is also going to go up, and the 10 amp fuse is going to be our fuse going to our DRL. Now we're going to go ahead and insert this back in where the 25 amp came out. Okay, again, this is just to show you the finished product. Here's our fuse tap connector plugged in right where that 25 amp fuse was plugged in. It's sitting over top of the red 10 amp fuse that's right there, but it's plugged into that slot. And I've also notched out a spot right here so that our wire can come out without being pinched. Okay, so now here is our new Morimoto housing. The back of this can look kind of confusing because you got a bunch of wires, but it's actually pretty simple. Just go to all the stuff that's not plugged into something. This first one right here, you've got a little blue plug in that. That's not even used. We're going to set that off to the side. This one right here, where it's just got the one connector inside, That's going to go to our DRL that we just wired up. So we're just going to plug that in there. Next, we've got 3 left, and that's going to go to our factory connectors. We've got this that came out of our amber turn. That's going to plug right into here. And then we've got this one. Plugs in like so. And then our high and low beam is going to plug into the last one. And just line up where the notches are and then slide them together. You hear them click. Now we can go ahead and fit it in place. Okay, now we can go ahead and put all of our bolts back in, but before we tighten them up, make sure everything's lined up. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and tighten down my 4 bolts and repeat the same process with installing the headlight on the opposite side. All right, now we're going to use some zip ties and fasten our DRL harness out of the way. All right, now we're just going to go ahead and slide the grill straight back in. And set the factory fasteners and tighten them down. All right, and don't forget to plug back in your harnesses for your active shutter system. And push that factory push pin back in place. Now we're going to put our radiator cover back on. All right, and lastly for the grill, we've got our 2 bolts, 1 on each side, that go in and tighten down with an 8mm. All right, now to install the plastic trim, the easiest way to do that is first to line up the tabs in the center. Once those are lined up, it'll just snap right in. You just gotta push it in. Mine's going to go in probably pretty easy because this has been in and out a few times. Yours, you might have to put a little bit more pressure on it. Then once we've done that, we're going to snap in the sides and wrap it around the edge. All right, now we can go ahead and install the 2 screws onto our trim. We'll be tightening that down with a 7mm. And repeat the same on the opposite side. Well guys, that concludes the installation. If you found this video helpful, please give us a thumbs up. If you want to know more about the product, check the link in the description below. As always, if you have any questions, call the experts or visit us online.